After many hours of browsing through issues of Photoplay magazine, I finally found enough fun little blurbs and stories to stitch together this video about how a movie was made in the 20s. Of course, keep in mind that this was written for a fan magazine, so it's not exactly the complete story, but what they do include is pretty much how it was done. Also, the dates on these range from 1920 to 1922, so talkies are not included. But I'll cover those more later on. Well anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. How to Write Movies. Photoplay, February 1920. Readers of Photoplay are familiar with the work of Anita Loos and John Emerson, the best-known collaborators in scenario writing in the realm of motion pictures. They wrote and directed the famous Douglas Fairbank photoplays of last year, Wild and Woolly, Reaching for the Moon, Down to Earth, etc. They have written many other photoplays for such stars as Elsie Ferguson and Mae Marsh, and they are now authors of all the Constance Talmadge screen dramas of this year. Miss Luce, Mrs. Emerson, has produced a steady stream of successful photoplays from the age of 16. This series was posed by Mr. Emerson and his Demitasse wife in order to show amateur scenario writers exactly what is expected of a movie writer under the present system. These pictures tell aspiring movie authors how to get the idea of how to assemble the completed film, a duty which producers expect from those from whom they buy their stories. Of course, there are a few requisites for success in this work which cannot be given you in 2 pages, such as ability to write well, originality of ideas, knowledge of plot construction, and other trifles. 1. Where the ideas come from. The greatest mine for movie stories is your daily newspaper. After reading hundreds of hackneyed ideas sent in from amateur scenarioists, we usually find the idea we're after in a headline. You don't think a coal strike makes a good story? We prophesy that more than 20 photoplays during the coming season will be based on that coal strike, just as every good news story forms inspiration for scores of scenarios. Do not work and fret over some flimsy, antique situation. Read the papers and you'll never lack a plot. 2. Reading the scenarios. Since the demand for movie stories this year is many times greater than the supply, and since $5,000 is now the minimum price for a good plot, nearly 70,000 people throughout the country have started to write movies. Send your story to the scenario editor, for no matter how many tons of scripts he gets a week, he'll gladly read it in the hope of finding a good story, just as we do. The pile on the table, representing the stories received in a few days, will give you some idea of the competition in scenario work. 3. Writing the scenario. After you've got the plot, sit down and write it out in scenario form, numbering the scenes from 1, 2, 3, etc. You'll find it simpler if you collaborate with someone else, for it's mighty easy to get mixed up if you haven't somebody to check you up and keep you from changing your hero's name or your heroine's character. We find it easiest to dictate our scenarios, saves time and facilitates concentration on the work. Composing a script with your own fingers often presents a conglomeration of figures and fancies that bewilder the most adamant of genius. It can be done, but slowly, and when you're under contract to turn out a new photoplay every 2 months, you'll hire a stenographer too. 4. Planning the story with the star. Here you see us working out details of the scenario with our star, Constance Talmadge, something you will have to do when you sell your movie. Make your story fit the star and keep her, or him, on the screen in at least 50% of the scenes, or you'll never sell the script. And when they call you into town to confer with the star, prepare for shocks, for these notables usually have pretty definite ideas of their own, as in our tableau above where Miss Luce looks her dismay, as Miss Talmadge and Mr. Emerson cheerily set about dissecting a pet scene, upon which the authoress has spent many ambitious hours. It's hard, but necessary, to let them revamp. 5. Casting the photoplay. Authors are usually called upon to cast their own stories nowadays. This means interviewing scores of aspirants, looking over their photographs, and tactfully explaining why they won't do. Sometimes it means searching the highways and byways for a rare type. Beware of writing into your scenario some such character as a red-headed girl with a dimple on her left cheek and a Roman nose, for you may have to find her for your producer. On one occasion, we spent a fortnight looking for 2 5-year-old darkies who would match up as twins. 6. Subbing as director. Many photoplay writers direct important scenes in their screen dramas, for producers are gradually realizing that, by letting one brain supervise the story, a finer bit of artistry can be produced. Many directors, on the other hand, are learning to write scenarios, just as Mr. Emerson, who was directing the shimmy dancing in the cabaret scene of Constance Talmadge's latest picture, The Virtuous Vamp, has made a study of directing. If you aspire to make a profession of scenario writing, you had better plan to learn every phase of photoplay production. 7. Working with the studio staff. Did you know that as a movie author, you will be expected to come to the studio and help produce the photoplay? It's all too true. In the above picture, you see us explaining a big scene to Miss Talmadge, the director, and cameramen. Movie writing is an all-around job, so don't try it unless you are willing to help supervise the production of your story. To most really successful screen authors, that's all a delicious idealist dream about lolling eternally out on the veranda, sipping iced drinks, while your privately owned accountant totals up the daily arrival of scenario checks. 8. Doping out the subtitles. Writing good subtitles and planning illustrated subtitle cards to be held before the camera is one of the hardest yet pleasantest sides of photoplay writing. It is a scenarioist's one chance to spread himself in clever, forceful verbiage. Use lots of subtitles. It's one of the secrets of good screen dramatization, but make them terse. The faster the action, the shorter the subtitle. Never forget that for every word you add to your subtitle card, another second or so must be added to the time it is held on the screen in order that the slowest reading spectator may fully grasp it. 9. Cutting the picture. Here's the hardest job of all. After your photoplay has been completely filmed, and the actors and directors and photographers have all gone off for a few days' rest, you'll have to sit up nights cutting the picture. They give you a hand projector wherein your photoplay appears in a microscopic animated picture, if you grind hard enough, and tell you to pick out the best scenes and assemble them. Since a picture consists of only 5,000 feet, and since they have probably taken 50,000 feet in the making of it, none of which is in any kind of sequence, you'll probably wish you'd stuck to your old trade. For you must not let even one badly acted or photographed scene slip in. 10. The first showing. There are no first nights or author's curtain speeches for photoplaywrights. But withal, there is no thrill which quite equals that of watching your own story when it appears complete for the first time on the screen of the tiny studio projection room. The cast and technical staff will be there to view it with you. Above, you will see this sort of an audience watching the final showing of the picture, The Virtuous Vamp, which you have followed from start to finish in this series. The names from left to right are Irene Conahan, the cutter, Anita Luce, Tallulah Bankhead of the cast, Constance Talmadge, the star, Oliver Marsh, the cameraman, Conway Tyrrell, and Mr. Emerson. Here's how it's done. Photoplay, August 1921. Marion Fairfax, long a scenario writer of international reputation, is at last carrying her thoughts all the way from script to finished photoplay. She's her own director now. This is the first interior scene from her first production, which she is making at the Hollywood studios. The average patron of pictures, while knowing that photoplays are the result of a combination of sunshine, celluloid, and electricity, has little idea of the enormous mechanical detail of motion picture photography, nor of the amount of science and technical skill entering into the taking of the simplest scenes of nowadays. 1. Banks of Cooper Hewitt lamps, a fairly familiar studio site. This pale greenish light, caused by a current of electricity flowing through mercury vapor, is eminently adapted for clarity and detail, though not for sharpness of photography. Kind as it is to photographic reproductions, the Cooper Hewitt ray is ghastly in its reflections upon the players' faces. 2. Spotlights, intended to throw down strong illumination for close-ups and particular scenes. 3. An open arc. This powerful yellowish-white light gives great brilliance to the entire setting, and is highly necessary for sharp detail of all the surroundings. This is the open lamp which causes the complaint known as Klieg eyes among the players, an intense, irritating affliction caused by microscopic carbon dust biting beneath the lids, and so called from a particular brand of open electric lamp. 4. A baby spot. This cute little implement of the electrician's revelations is particularly a feature illuminator. It is as portable as a chair. 5. A reserve battery of extra Kliegs, spots, floods, and arcs. In addition to the number of pieces of electrical artillery actually on the illuminative firing line, a strong reserve corps awaits emergencies. 6. The technical director, and in front of him, the still camera and 2 operatives. Stills of every important scene are made with ordinary photographic processes that one finds in the best portrait studios, as a motion picture is for motion only, and does not reproduce well when its small single prints are taken and enlarged. 7. The camera, with photographer Rene Guissart about to photograph an intimate little scene between Marjorie Daw and Noah Beery sitting on the couch, while back of them, hand extended, is the author-director Miss Fairfax herself. Pat O'Malley, by the way, leans forward, interestedly, upon the nearby chair. The motion picture camera is a complicated piece of mechanism, costing as much as a fine automobile. 8. A chandelier. Nowadays, all lights in a picture setting are practical. That is to say, they work with switches exactly like the electrolyrs of a dwelling. But in a picture, they register merely their own natural illumination. Finally, notice the setting itself. This picture is an unusually fine example of the modern technique of interior construction. In the old days, they built merely one room at a time. Here you see a whole lower floor. The big room opens into two others, and beyond it you may behold the vestibule of the mimic dwelling, and stairs leading to a presumable second floor. Following the magic camera on locations east and west. Photoplay, April 1922. Trailing the capricious camera indoors and out is like taking a ride on the magic carpet. You see country roads and city mansions, Chinese streets and courtrooms. These pictures give you a glimpse into the difficult business of making the whole world move before your wondering eyes. These high platforms are frequently used by directors for shooting big scenes. It's the only way a producer can see all of his set at once. An entire street was built at Goldwyn's for whims of the gods. Roland Lee is pretending his principal player, Winter Blossom, is an Oriental Pearl White. Babe Daniels is quite at home in a courtroom. The courtroom in this case is the Lasky studio, and Maurice Campbell is the cruel judge who's sentencing our babe to shed some tears, so the company can call it a day. Incidentally, all those lights would give you a terrific headache, to say nothing of painting you a ghastly green, unless you were made up to suit the camera. Over in New Jersey, George Arliss registered emotion under a cloudless sky, but the white screens in the mirrors helped Old Soul out. The camera needs not only sunshine, but sunshine softened or intensified by various mechanical devices. You note Mr. Arliss has no illusions about his art. He doesn't need a stringed orchestra to make him act. Also in New Jersey, not far from Fort Lee, a pastoral marred somewhat by cameras and electricians. They do need spotlights for outdoor stuff sometimes. They are taking a medium shot of Doris Kenyon and Eddie Burns. Seated are the director and the continuity writer. Against a Hollywood hill, this Mexican ranch house was erected, and it, and the specially constructed cactus, gave perfect satisfaction, just as real as life. If you walked around back of the house, you would see a skeleton of a dwelling, but the camera shot it only from this angle, so it was alright. The sun was good this particular day, yet note the reflectors at the left to intensify light on the actors. When you look at this, you aren't to be blamed for thinking a studio life is the life for you. Around the Talmadge studio, everyone wears a broad smile. Perhaps it's because Constance's good humor is infectious. Here are John Emerson and Anita Luce directing a group of Follies Corines for Polly of the Follies. Connie is Miss Fatima, Anita the French doll. Chasing the Camera. Photoplay, April 1920. Cameramen rush in where even flivvers fear to tread. On mountaintops and bus tops, under the water and over the clouds, they leisurely grind the silence. Here is one camera, for instance, discovered right in the act of registering the sunset finale. It has been said that the thing that makes a dictatorial cameraman maddest is his inability to hold back Old Soul for a retake. Eugene O'Brien and Lucy Cotton are the couple. The dog is probably a sunsetter. As the Follies fiend sitting in the gallery admitted, you can't always tell from where you sit. On the screen, this shows Elsie Janis in a police bus, rattling down the street. You wouldn't have realized that this old oaken annex rattled along behind her, creaking under its load of director, cameraman, and assistants. This scene is warranted to make any anti-movie critic and pro-legit hound mad. Elaine Hammerstein's director, Alan Crosland, sneaked a camera onto the stage. If this be treason, let's film the most of it. This is the interior of the Manhattan Opera House in New York. Elaine is just about to do some silent singing. Although the cameraman cannot make the sun stand still, he can arrange to turn it around and make it shine the other way. The white reflectors achieve this in the hands of the property men for Ruth Rowland's company. Ruth is holding the megaphone. It must give a horse a wonderfully superior feeling to observe an automobile giving way before him. In the machine are Will Rogers, cameraman and director. Will is on, generally speaking, his horse. A cameraman has to feel at home any place. In a millionaire's garden, a tenement fire escape, or, as in this case, atop a Fifth Avenue bus, where he carted his camera at George Baker's direction to shoot villain Anders Randolph at the left and heroine Marion Davies. Sounds for the silent drama. Photoplay, August 1922. Celluloid drama isn't always silent. Here are pictured in action the various accompaniments produced by unique mechanical devices. Added shivers on the part of the audience are induced for snowstorm scenes by the operation of a weird machine off stage. You can almost feel the icy wind in your sheltered seat in the theater. Any city dweller will tell you that a derrick in motion is a noisy affair. This instrument reproduces the grating sound peculiar to derricks, windlasses, and other noisy engines of industry. This beautiful picture on the screen, and the manipulation of this device by the trap drummer, makes you believe you are really on some rock-bound coast. The sound of the surf synchronizes with the shadow sea. Hark, hark, the dogs do bark. Rover couldn't tell the sound made by this contrivance from his own bark. Celluloid canines are assisted in their histrionic efforts from the orchestra. Another frequently used device is that which describes the sound of tearing cloth. This is used mostly during comedy scenes, when the bulldog catches the comedian halfway over the fence. To watch a celluloid baby cry is bad enough, but when a skillful performer upon this instrument makes you hear the child as well, you want to weep too. George Beban in Bambino went oval, aided by the artificial howler. A quaint chromo, relic of livelier days. A scene like it on the screen is made even more heartrending by an excellent imitation of the plop of the cork when a champagne bottle is opened.